Hey, Pastor Steve Waldron here, New Life Pentecostal Church, Albany, Georgia. You know, I was recently confronted with what was supposedly the toughest pro-life question to answer. And it's kind of made the rounds on the internet, and some guy's sitting there saying it's never been answered, and this proves that life does not begin at conception. And here's kind of the thought experiment that it is. It's that if you're in a maternity clinic, there's a guy in the maternity clinic, and the maternity clinic catches on fire. And so you have a 5-year-old boy to the left whose mother has run outside and left him there for whatever reason, or something in this thought experiment. And you have 200, or whatever the number is in the thought experiment, viable embryos in petri dishes in a laboratory up the hall, and the fire is engulfing the place, and you've only got time to save one. Would you save the 5-year-old, or would you save the 200 viable embryos? And so every time he says that pro-life people always say you save the 5-year-old, then he says you're not being consistent because you just burn up 200 people for one. But we all know that a child is different than embryos. Now, my response to that is, how are they viable if they're not in a lady's womb? You know, they're not viable till they're in the lady's womb. I would say that that thought experiment is prima facie wrong. It's wrong on its face. I would say that it's a petri dish. There's no babies growing in petri dishes. It's not happening. It requires implantation into the womb. And so I would say that this supposedly, and this has gotten hundreds of thousands of reshares on Facebook, and it's considered to be bringing down a large segment of the pro-life movement. I'd say it's totally wrong. What you should have is a thought experiment. You've got a lady that's pregnant, or you have a 5-year-old, then what do you do? Now that would be a different moral question, a different moral dilemma altogether, and that is a thought experiment for another time. But this one, supposedly the toughest pro-life question you can get, I think it's absurd on its face. And so I don't think there's any viability of an embryo in a petri dish. It's not viable until it's in the mother's womb. Anyhow, you might have different thoughts. Put them in the comments below. God bless you. I'll talk with you later in Jesus' name.